Philipp Meyer left school at 16, took a succession of odd jobs, paid his way through college, and then went to work on Wall Street. 10 years ago, he gave it all up to become a writer. His first novel, American Rust, was well received 5 years ago. Now he's written The Sun. It's the story of several generations of the McCulloch family, who go from pioneers on the Texas frontier to one of the state's richest family. It's not just a saga worthy of an airport blockbuster, it's also a deeply researched historical novel that's vivid, violent, and morally troubling. Philipp Meyer, this is a sort of story we think we all know. It's the story we've seen in countless westerns of the opening up of the frontier and the frontiersmen moving in, fighting off the vicious Indians and so on. This book is a deliberate challenge, isn't it, to that traditional notion?
Yeah, absolutely. When you grow up in the U.S., you're quite aware of these two competing creation myths. On one hand, there's a sort of John Wayne myth, as you described, of the noble, innocent Anglo settlers who move west, and you can sort of almost, it's something that a lot of Americans fantasize about this time when the land was open, there were no people there, and you moved to the edge of settlement, hacked out a sort of a plantation house for yourself, and through hard work and your guts, you made a name for yourself and got property. The competing mythology is that the sort of vicious Anglo settler move into Native American lands, brutally kill off the Native Americans, who are sort of equally seen as noble, philosophically superior, morally superior, spiritually superior. They're these sort of greater beings who are close to the earth, and compared to the sort of rapacious white folks. The truth is not even in between. The truth is that neither one of those mythologies are accurate.
So what are you advancing as an alternative?
That people are actually the same. The history of North America for about 15,000 years was not so different than the history of Europe. It was a history of cultures rising, falling, assaulting each other. In Texas alone, by about 1650, the Spanish had arrived to write this down. By 1650, the Apache Indians come in and they wipe out almost every other Indian tribe in Texas. This is an area that's about the size of France. It's an enormous area. By 1750, the Comanche Indians have come in and wiped out the Apache, and by 1830, 1840, whites have come in, Anglos have come in and begin to challenge the Comanche. But that battle lasts for about 50 years, and the Comanche finally go in just before 1880.
Your central character, Eli McCulloch, is kidnapped at 13 by Comanches, brought up by them, lives with them for several years, and then becomes a cattle baron after a checkered career down there on the Mexican border. And what he has learnt from this and from his upbringing is that violence and greed are the way to get what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think, again, I think all nations construct this mythology to excuse whatever sort of acquisitive and vicious and violent behavior got them their land and got them their resources. I mean, we all do this, because, and all nations construct equal mythologies to dehumanize whoever they've taken the land from, whoever they've taken the resources from.
You don't stint in your description of the violence. There is one particularly distressing episode where the Comanches capture a white man and torture him to death, or would torture him to death if Eli doesn't step in and end his sufferings. Did you have second thoughts about the violence?
Yeah, I think the sort of politically correct part of me often doubted that this was the right thing to do. But I think your duty as a writer, as an artist, is to tell the truth. All of what violence there is in the book is absolutely historically based. This is not me thinking about what this might have been like. This absolutely is taken from the historical record. There are, and the fact is that the brutality was completely equal on both sides.
One of the things that's impressive about the book is its air of authenticity. That includes the language. There's a wonderful bit in which Eli's talking about living in the city. The city, he says, was above my bend. It was nothing but gutter snipes and gay cats, whoremongers and Sunday men. I mean, I love this slang. But the other thing, of course, that's authentic about it is your descriptions of the Comanche lifestyle. And you did the research. You learned to fire a bow, you learned to kill a buffalo, you drunk buffalo blood.
That's true, right? This is true.
Why go to such detail?
So I think there's sort of two types of writers. On one side, the folks who are quite, of novelists, I should say, who are quite comfortable if they don't understand every historical detail, they don't understand the sort of facts of the environment that they're writing about. And then unfortunately, for me, I'm on the other side. I feel quite unsure of myself unless I see the land quite clearly, unless I know where the people sleep, how they eat, where does their food come from, where does their money come from, who do they vote for if they vote.
Eli's not the only central character in this. There's his son, Peter, who is writing a diary in around 1915, 1917, and is the only character in the book really with a kind of moral compass. He's horrified when the family, the McCullochs, go out and massacre the Mexican owners of the neighbouring ranch and appropriate their land. And then there is Eli's great-granddaughter, I think I've got that right, Jean Ann, who becomes an oil baron in 20th century Texas. And they offer, and she's as tough as the old man, really.
Sure.
What does the McCulloch family and its story tell us about modern Texas?
So I think the McCulloch family is certainly representative of a modern, powerful Texas family, but they're also representative of, frankly, most of the powerful families in America. I mean, whether you're talking about land in New York State or Pennsylvania, the far East Coast, all of that land was taken. It was all taken by force, and all these fortunes are fundamentally extractive. They're fundamentally based on taking resources at the lowest possible price. And this is how all wealth is essentially built.
And very destructive. I mean, you describe a Texas in the 1850s that was green and lush, and after a century of cattle ranching, it's all gone.
And irrigation. No, it is all gone. Some of that was intentional. Some of that was actually ignorance. But this is actually what humans do. If you look at the Middle East, Babylon was this rich, lush, beautiful place, which is now a desert. This is actually what people do. We extract resources, not always intentionally, but it always ends up being a bit too much. We tend to, turn fertile areas to desert, fruit to thorns. This is the sort of movement of human history. I mean, it's not just Texas or America. This is what we do to every place.
This is a bleak book, isn't it? It describes what is, in effect, a morally bankrupt society in which the people at the top got there, they or their ancestors got there by corruption and greed, and they're devoted to getting and spending. It's not an optimistic book.
It's funny because I don't think of it that way. What's interesting is that despite all that, here we are having children, falling in love, doing this interview, reading books. And I think that's sort of, I think Faulkner had the same idea. His books sort of appear to be very dark on the surface. They're quite violent. But you read his Nobel address, and the message is, we're going to make it, essentially. Don't worry about these. At this time, nuclear weapons were the big problem. And his Nobel address is absolutely, humanity's going to survive. We are going to persevere, because despite all this bad stuff that's happening, we've made it this far.
Philipp Meyer, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.